Dr. Judice here with ApolloHealth. Who are we here with?
Gabby.
And Alison.
Yep, cool.
Thanks for being here. We're just talking to some of our variety of people in these series, discussing health things. Some old people, some new people.
And you guys are, on the more seasoned side with us. I'm going to ask you what you came in with, but I seem to recall you coming in
On like a thyroid lecture or something like that. I think we were doing thyroid talks out in the community because so many people have thyroid problems, and it's kind of like so few options in the endocrinology world. If your thyroid levels are out, they give you thyroid hormone, but nobody deals with like the autoimmune component, the Hashimoto's and things like that. So that's what I recall. So tell me.
Well, I had actually come because I had hurt my back in the garden, and I let it go for like a year, and finally I was like, I think I need to find a chiropractor. And then I asked Tracy for one, because I thought that she would have a good recommendation, and she highly recommended you. So I came in, but I had just happened to have gotten my physical, and it showed, and my sister has Hashimoto's, and so it had just shown up in my blood work.
Okay, interesting.
So basically I've been treated with you for that for, we were wondering how long I've been coming, but 14 years maybe?
Yeah.
And
Not for the back, it's like an ongoing thyroid.
Ongoing
yeah.
thyroid, but I have, whereas my sister has been on medication for 20 years and doesn't have the thyroid anymore, I've been able to treat it completely with diet with you, and I think it's under control.
Right.
I mean,
your labs indicate so.
Right.
So, was it? There's certain things we're going to do with every Hashimoto's person, right? And diet is the first thing, always, 100% of the time. Was it easy for you to just make a huge shift like that, or was it not a huge shift diet-wise?
well, you first told me I had to get off of dairy, which was very distressing. And I remember I went out to dinner with my friend, and I told her I wasn't eating dairy anymore, and she was like, oh wow, that's rough. And I said, well, at least it's not gluten. And then
7 days later.
2 weeks later, 7 days later, I showed up here, and you were like, so, I hate to tell you this, but you gotta get off gluten. Which I have been off for 14 years. Alison and I talk about this all the time. I happen to be somebody who it's not super, it's not that it's not challenging, and it does get frustrating, and at first it's kind of hard, but I am highly motivated by health. And so if you tell me I'm gonna, be healthy, then I'm sort of able to commit to that. I think from history with my family and my mother dying really young, so for me, even though the initial shock is shocking, I was able to do it, and I have to say, 3 days after I got off of gluten, I felt like a totally different person.
Yeah.
Without even knowing I had an issue.
And especially with, obviously, I don't think that many people are under the impression anymore that gluten is good for anybody. But with the thyroid problem, one of the things that happens is, especially when it's autoimmune, the thyroid or the immune system will cross-react to gluten and thyroid. So some of the protein sequences in there look very similar to your own thyroid enzymes that are within you that makes thyroid hormone. So when you have exposure to gluten, your immune system attacks it simultaneously due to molecular mimicry. It attacks your thyroid, and then you tell people you're slowly losing thyroid tissue every time you're exposed to it, and even worse so, that will also often cross-react with certain parts of your brain, right? So when people, I can't get rid of my bagels or whatever, I'm like, okay, but you're gonna be going through significant neurological issues, and I don't think people who are not self-motivated like you, sometimes they need to be scared into it or something like that, because what's happening is, it'd be irresponsible for me to say, oh, you don't want to get rid of a bagel? Okay, just eat your bagels.
I just feel like
That no food is worth being ill.
Right.
But that's because you've had the experience. Like when you have a really bad experience, that's a lot of times people come to you because they're like, that's when you're motivated. Like it's that, like a lot of times if stuff's like, it's okay, you're like, I'll just keep eating
I don't
it.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And And Alison, for you, you've had to undergo some of the more strict dietary guidelines
Yeah.
possible due to various gut issues, right?
Yeah.
Like, and through college, and one of the more other than teen athletes, the second most common issue we run into with teens is gut issues, right? So we have teen athlete injuries and blah blah blah. Then we have especially college age women, young women, having gut issues, and it's so hard to treat, especially when they're in college for most of the year. So, right, so like, what was it like that for you at that point?
Yeah, I mean, my gut issues were so bad, like going back to when you're miserable, like you'll do anything. Like I was really miserable, and like I didn't even feel like myself. Like it affects your mental health a lot too. So I was willing to do anything to feel better. I think I even like started doing it myself. I looked up like the SIBO diet. I kind of like self-diagnosed, or like you had said something, I don't know. And I started doing it even in the dining hall, and I was only eating like the salad bar. And then thank God the next year I ended up having like a apartment, so I could actually cook and everything. So then it was much more doable for me. But yeah, like it was bad enough that like I was willing to do anything basically to just feel normal again.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think for somebody in a similar situation, like what would they need to know for a college age girl, young woman, whatever, like what do they need to know to be able to say, oh, I'm going to college, I can't possibly do this? You know, what would you tell them from your perspective, from having done it? Not many people can execute that, right?
Yeah.
Some have, but you did, and you come out the other side.
Do they already have
The
Let's
gut
say they're
issues?
symptomatic, they have gut
Okay.
issues, and like that's the primary thing, and they've already been through medical route, right? And there's no solution. And, like, you know, how could you possibly motivate them?
I mean, I think it really just depends on like your priorities. Like you do have to shift around your lifestyle, and I mean the biggest motivator is pain, and so sometimes it does take you having the personal experience a lot of times of like, this is so uncomfortable, like I'm willing to do whatever. I mean, I started off in college as gluten-less, I would call it, where I was mostly gluten-free. And it probably was, and then I would drink beer when I would go out, and I would still have stuff in the dining hall. And I got food poisoning in the dining hall, so all of that combined probably is what led to that. And so, I mean, yeah, if you can prevent it, it's definitely the ideal route to go, but like...
I think for you, you also realized it was a process, and it wasn't like an immediate...
Yeah, it's like process versus event.
Well, it's a lifestyle change. You can't expect, you have to come to terms with the fact this is your life. Like, I mean, you told me originally, you're like, oh, just go on this for 2 weeks. And I think by the end of the 2 weeks,
The trick.
and then by the end of the 2 weeks, it almost felt worse because that's when the bacteria starts dying. So then I was like, no, like this, like I had to stay with it. And then, I mean, I've been on it now for what, like 5 years?
However, yeah.
But one of the things that happens with people in the like that weird 2 week phases, a lot of like gluten and dairy and various other things have like morphine-like compounds in them. So a lot of people will go off of X food, gluten, dairy, what have you, and can feel worse because it's like the addiction is withdrawal is kicking in, right? So those are called like gluteomorphin or caseomorphin.
Oh,
like
yeah.
and that's going off. And then, you get, once your immune system is actually starting to wake up in your gut because it's not being inflamed by what you're eating, it starts able to kill bacteria, right? And then bacteria produces like lipopolysaccharides, which are super inflammatory. So you can get those die-off reactions. They go systemic, especially when you have leaky gut. You get these like inflammatory compounds going into your bloodstream. So sometimes it sucks. But
Also,
certainly it's better than having chronic infection.
I guess like the one thing that I feel like is the bigger motivators, people who already are interested in like health and wellness, because it is very popular right now, like mental health and like just like living a healthy lifestyle and like all of that, like that's very motivating because it's like it almost gives you a reason to lean into that side. So like I've always been someone that was very like, I was an athlete in high school and always liked being healthy and feeling good in my body. And so like it did give me not like an excuse, but sort of like an excuse to really focus on that part of my life. So I think that that's like the positive, I guess, reinforcement of it, that like they can focus on, if like this is how I can be like sort of my best self, and like all of that kind of stuff that comes with focusing on your health. Like it's not just your physical body, it's like
and you're like future paced too. You're not just like getting the immediate gratification. You're kind of like thinking about the future at the same time. Like you simultaneously do what you need to do now to create the future that you want.
But me and my mom are both
you
very good
can
at that.
shamelessly promote the fact that
And now
that she coaches.
Now she's
now I
already
coaches.
Yeah.
I do. Yes. I'm a certified holistic health coach and also just a life coach, which is a lot more of what my coaching sort of focused on, is more of like the life coaching aspect of it, but it all connects to the body. So
Yeah, you get the triad, the whole body, mind, and
mind, body, soul.
and get that all synced up together so that you can have more balance and harmony, etc.
Well, that was a big mistake I think I made, was that I separated the mind and the body. So I was so focused on
From what I
fixing the
recall,
body.
you intentionally kind of kept that separate from what I recall. But
Really?
You didn't, yeah.
Wait, why was I intentional about
You
that?
were more like a denier of certain aspects. And then all of a sudden you weren't.
Wait, what was I denying?
You can ask your mom, but sometimes, maybe not you guys, but sometimes parents try to coach me on what I need to review with their kids, like certain aspects of health. And I'm like, okay, I'll try to build that in and make it not sound like you told me to do it.
Yeah, because I think personally, like, because it took me a really long time to like actually heal. I think the big like roadblock that I didn't realize was I was doing everything right physically, but I was being so hard on myself and really hard on my body, and I hit like a block that I couldn't heal anymore until I started healing like my mind.
Yeah.
And that was when it finally was like, oh, okay, now like you're not in constant nervous system dysregulation and like dysregulating yourself all the time, and putting a lot of pressure on yourself all the time. And that's when everything finally started to like actually heal.
That sounds like a critical thing for especially younger people to know.
Yeah, I think especially younger women, because there's a lot of pressure put on us in the way we're supposed to look and like how we're supposed to eat and all of that stuff. And so that is like the biggest, I think, thing for like young women to take into consideration. It's not just being perfect with your physical health, but like the mental health aspect of it is like critical to actually healing.
It's huge. I agree, especially in that age. You see, bad stuff happening all the time. And if people just were able to know that and execute on that, or have somebody help you through that, or what have you, I think we'd be better off.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you can hire me if you
You can hire her.
need help.
We can just tag you at the bottom.
Just tag me at the bottom.
We'll collaborate on that. Great. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate both of you guys.
Sure.
And anything else you want to say? Closing.
Yeah, I think people get really frustrated and lose confidence in the traditional medical system. I think, you really fill in that gap, and I think it depends on how desperate people are to really, following through, because there's such a difference between the medical health system, which obviously is just immediate gratification, Band-Aid stuff, and you offer really recovery from so much, but it does require you, the person, to put the effort in.
Yeah.
And that I remember you saying to me a long time ago, like, this took years for you to get yourself into this situation. It's not going to take days to get out of it. Like, it is, it's a big process, and it's just, if you can get them to recognize that, I don't know, it's hard. I think it's at how desperate you are and how recognizing. I think there's also just like a real kind of like a social stigma on, you're one of those gluten-free people, and my sister has had to go to a holistic person, and she's trying her best, but I overheard her talking to her friend, like, yeah, I'm on this diet, but you know, like making excuses for it. And you know, it really is just mindset, and it's not this like negative thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what the key is for that.
Yeah.
The key is, I think, somebody.
Desperation.
Yeah, unfortunately, it
Kind of.
gets to that, but I don't think that's like the ideal world, you know. So, somebody can probably learn something from this and say, okay, I'm not going to. I understand it's a process. I'm not going to wait until I'm a disaster, and then I'm not going to like bail out and make excuses just because it didn't work in 3 days. You know, like other people, and everyone has people in their family who are like that, right? And I just picture in my head, like, is that what you want on your tombstone? Like, I needed my bagels or whatever. You know?
I know. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It isn't easy because we live in a world that, you know, encourages a lot of the other stuff. So
Well, it's like
And
the
a lot-
dopamine.
that's what people are doing.
Yeah.
People are addicted. It's addictive. It's
Yeah.
actually an addiction.
I think people finally realize that their insurance company and the big health medical groups are not after their best interest.
Yeah.
But what I don't think they realize yet is that big food is not after their best interest.
People are starting to catch on, and people are starting to catch on. Like Tati, for example, like her and her mom come to because like they didn't feel like they were treated like humans when they went to the hospital. Like it's like, oh, this is your problem. Okay, try this drug, and they don't even ask you what's going on.
Yeah.
And like that's like a sort of desperation too. It's a different kind, but like not feeling like anyone actually cares about you is horrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. So it's like also just having the support of like I'm gonna go in and someone's gonna tell me what's happening in my body as opposed to just giving me some random chemical to ingest.
Yeah. Right.
And
Brilliant.
the only other thing positive about coming to you, which is I think about this, you know, if I send a friend or whatever, but it's like if you go, you know, to a regular doctor, there's a lot of fear in there because it's really, you're hoping they don't find something. That's kind of what they're all about.
Sure.
They're just looking for stuff and you hope you leave there and they haven't found anything. Whereas you, that's not what it's about optimizing, you know, where you're at. And it's always a very positive experience versus one based in fear. Especially someone like me that has a lot of health anxiety.
You know, it's like
Yeah, beautiful. That was a great point. I appreciate that.